Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Today we're going to be talking about refuting arguments against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So here we go. I'm not going to be refuting all the arguments against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Below this video, I'm going to post a link that I made. That I made 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, back in 2011 or back in 2012. I can't remember when I made it, but I think it was 2012. 6 years ago. It's a link from my website saying refuting arguments against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And in that, on that link or in that website, I refute every single argument made against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, against critics of Islam, whether it's atheist critics or Christian critics of Muhammad, peace be upon him, or other critics of Islam. So basically, I refute all the arguments made against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in that link, and I'll be posting that below. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is I'm just going to be refuting two arguments against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and that's the argument that Prophet Muhammad made up Islam, or he made up the Quran for his own personal benefit, or he plagiarized off Jews and Christians. So those are the only two arguments. Those are the only three arguments I'm going to be refuting in this video. So here we go. The first argument is, did the Prophet Muhammad make up the Quran for his own personal benefit? And the answer is no. Now critics who use this argument are committing the fallacy of circumstantial ad hominem. The fallacy of circumstantial ad hominem is kind of like saying this salesman has a motive to sell me this car, so that means I cannot trust him. So basically, it's a fallacy. The critics who use this are committing the fallacy of circumstantial ad hominem. Just because a personal benefit came to the Prophet out of something, in this case out of the Quran. So the critics arguing that a personal benefit came out of a Quranic verse in favor of the Prophet Muhammad, or there was a personal benefit that came to the Prophet out of certain Quranic verses. That doesn't mean you render the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to be unreliable, or that doesn't mean Muhammad, peace be upon him, made up the Quran. Or he made up verses from the Quran favoring him, or made up the Quranic verses to give him a personal benefit. So the whole thing is called the fallacy of circumstantial ad hominem. So this is a very easy argument to refute. And the Prophet, if you read the Prophet Muhammad's life, the Prophet didn't change the revelation to make him rich, nor did he seek personal glory for himself. The Prophet Muhammad could have changed the revelation to exempt him from prayer, but he prayed the most. This is found in the Quran, chapter 17, etc., etc. And if you just read the Prophet's life, you'll see that he suffered way more for preaching than any other personal benefit that he could have gained out of this. And if you read Ibn Ehteshaam Volume 1, in Makkah they offered him everything if he just stopped preaching Islam, but he refused. So you have to look at the complete picture. So this whole thing is called the fallacy of circumstantial ad hominem. So another thing that refutes this argument is even the Orientalists and the critics of Islam, like Orientalists like John Gilch or Arthur Geld Leonard, Sir William Moyer, or Montgomery Watt. All these Orientalists, and again, these aren't Muslims, these are actually critics of Islam. Most of them were critics of Islam, like William Moyer was a critic of Islam. But anyways, all of them say that Muhammad was sincere, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sincere and he was and he at least subjectively, sincerely, and believed that he was receiving revelations from God. So even Orientalists or even Christian critics of Islam or Muhammad, peace be upon him, say at least Muhammad was sincere. He was sincere in doing what he was sincere in preaching Islam and delivering the Quran and things like that. So it's kind of misleading to say Prophet Muhammad just made up the Quran. We can rule that out. So indeed, if Prophet Muhammad was sincere, he wouldn't have done two things. He wouldn't have made up the Quran from his own mind. He wouldn't have made up Quranic verses out of his own mind, or he wouldn't have knowingly written the Quran from his own mind. Or in two, he wouldn't have plagiarized off other Jewish and Christian sources. So Christian critics of Islam or atheist critics or whatever say that the Prophet Muhammad was plagiarizing off Jews and Christians in Arabia. He plagiarized off the Bible or Jewish and Christian apocryphal materials, or rejected, like they allege that the Prophet Muhammad plagiarized off the infancy Gospel of Thomas about Jesus making the 12 clay birds, and he plagiarized off he plagiarized off there's supposedly a group of an early group of Christians called Dakotas, or I forgot the name, but it's called Dakesium or whatever. So they'll say that the Daketists were in Arabia, and they were preaching that Jesus wasn't crucified. So the Prophet Muhammad heard that, and he put that into the Quran. Now, if Prophet Muhammad was sincere, he wouldn't have done that. And so this refutes the argument that Prophet Muhammad was just plagiarizing off other, Jews and Christians in Arabia at that time. Because if the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sincere, and again, I quoted several Orientalists and Christian critics who are no friends of Islam, who are not friendly to Islam or the Quran or the Prophet Muhammad. Even they admit that he was sincere. So if the Prophet Muhammad was sincere, he wouldn't have knowingly plagiarized that stuff and put it into the Quran. So that refutes that argument. Another reason why he wouldn't have done that is because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, always said, there's a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad said that the Jews and Christians have corrupted their scriptures. So the Prophet Muhammad believed that the Jews and Christians have corrupted their scriptures. Why would he plagiarize off them? That doesn't make any sense. It would be like me saying, I don't support Trump, but then on election day I vote for Trump. That would be hypocrisy on my side. So why would the Prophet Muhammad just say the Jews and Christians have corrupted their scriptures and then plagiarize off the Jews and Christians? That doesn't make any sense. So the Prophet Muhammad was anti-Bible. He didn't believe in the Bible anyways, and this is found in Tafsir ibn Kathir, Quran chapter 5 verse 13 through 15. So if you read Tafsir ibn Kathir's commentary in the Quran chapter 5 verse 13 through 15, you'll find that hadith. I don't have Tafsir ibn Kathir in front of me, but you can look it up yourselves. So the Prophet Muhammad thought that the Jews and Christians have corrupted their scriptures. So if he thought the Jews and Christians have corrupted their scriptures, then why would he plagiarize off the Jews and Christians? That doesn't make any sense. So that's just some arguments against this idea that the Prophet Muhammad made up the Quran for his own personal benefit, or he was just manipulating people to believe him, when in reality he was just self-serving himself. No, there's a lot of evidence against that. For example, the Prophet Muhammad wasn't allowed to take charity, or he wasn't allowed to take charity. So if the Prophet Muhammad was really making up Islam, why couldn't he just say, oh yeah, give me charity and stuff like that, give me money? He didn't do that. In fact, there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim where one of the Prophet Muhammad's grandchildren was eating a date, and that date was for charity, and the Prophet Muhammad made him spit it out and said that we prophets, we don't take charity or things like that. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, refused any kind of charity or money or anything like that. So my question is if the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was making up Islam from the beginning, why would he reject money? Why would he reject charity and stuff like that? He could have just said, oh, I'm the Prophet of God, give me money and stuff like that, and people would have given him wealth and stuff like that. But we see the exact opposite was the case. the Prophet Muhammad didn't, he didn't enjoy luxury and things like that. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also prayed the most. If you read the Quran, chapter 17, verse 79, it says the Prophet Muhammad is supposed to pray tahajjud. And Ibn Abbas in his commentary says only the Prophet Muhammad is supposed to pray the nightly prayer, pray the most. So if the Prophet Muhammad was really making up Islam, why would he say, yeah, I have to pray the most? He could have just said, well, I'm Allah's messenger, I'm God's final messenger or whatever. I don't have to pray because God's already forgiven me and stuff like that. But no, the Quran says you Prophet Muhammad, have to pray the most. You can't get out of it. So the Prophet Muhammad was, these are all evidences that the Prophet Muhammad was sincere. So if the Prophet Muhammad was sincere, like the Orientalists and Christian critics of Islam say, who are again not friendly with Islam, then the Prophet Muhammad wouldn't have plagiarized other Jewish and Christian sources, and he wouldn't have he wouldn't have made up the Quran from his own mind, or he wouldn't have had self-serving revelations and stuff like that. So again, this whole thing. So if the critics of Islam say, yeah, the Prophet Muhammad was, making up the Quran for his own personal benefit and stuff like that, again, this is the fallacy of circumstantial ad hominem. So they're committing a fallacy. And well, there's another good book that really delves into the Prophet Muhammad's sincerity, and it's this book, An Introduction to the Sciences of the Quran by Abu Amr Yasser Qadri. This is a book about the Quran and stuff like that. So in the last part of this book, it talks about the Prophet Muhammad's sincerity. That the Prophet Muhammad was sincere and things like that. So if the Prophet Muhammad was sincere, he wouldn't have made up stories in the Quran. He wouldn't have made up verses of the Quran and plagiarized these biblical or these non-canonical biblical stories and stuff like that. And this is found in page 381 of this book called An Introduction to the Sciences of the Quran by Abu Amr Yasser Qadri. And then the author of this book refutes that the Quran was just the imagination of the Prophet Muhammad and things like that, where they say that if the Prophet Muhammad, and the person who wrote this book is saying that where the Prophet Muhammad was sincere and stuff like that, and and the Quran also refutes this view that the Prophet Muhammad was just making up the Quran in Quran chapter 21 verse 5, where it says these revelations are just muddled dreams, and Allah, who's according to Muslim belief according to Muslims is the author of the Quran, says, nay, he has invented it, nay, he is a poet, then let them bring us some miracles like the prophets of old were given. So this is an old claim, that the Prophet Muhammad was just making up the Quran and stuff like that. The Quran indirectly refutes this argument in the Quran chapter 53, where the Quran says that the Prophet Muhammad doesn't speak from his own desire, but he speaks from whatever God tells him to speak. Another thing is, the Quran says it's from Allah, or the Quran says it's from God in the Quran chapter 2, verse 1 through Quran chapter 2, verse 1 through 3. So if the Prophet Muhammad was really the author of the Quran, then he would have, why would he say Allah is the author of the Quran? Because he could have just said that, yeah, I'm the author of the Quran and stuff like that, because the Arabs back in that time weren't able to match the linguistic miracle of the Quran, because the Quran was revealed in 7 different dialects, and linguistically it's impossible to speak those kind of dialects. That's one of the arguments Muslim apologists make. And even to this day, Arabs, they're not able to produce a book like the Quran that can unify like Arabs into one, religious political identity. Only the Quran revealed the Prophet Muhammad was able to unite the Arabs into one religious or political identity, and Arabs, they're not able to do it. Even though there are some critics of Islam have tried to mimic the Quran, it's always a mumbled mess, or it's always 100% failure. So they're not able to do it. So these are just there's other examples that show that the Prophet Muhammad was sincere in things like that. That he was sincere in giving the message and stuff like that. He wasn't just plagiarizing off Jews and Christians, or he just wasn't making up stuff to do self-serving revelations and things like that. And so again, the book is this book. It's called An Introduction to the Sciences of the Quran by Pbuh Yasir Qadri, and this is found on page the refutation of this is found by the refutation to this argument is found in page 376 to page 381. So I would just recommend. I'm trying to keep this video short, so I can't really I can't really get into get into what he says and stuff like that, but he gives some good arguments against the Prophet Muhammad just making up the Quran and things like that. So I would just recommend this book. So for example, so on page 375, he gives examples of the Prophet Muhammad's sincerity, but that Prophet Muhammad was sincere and stuff like that. And one example is there was an incident where the Prophet Muhammad had a son named Ibrahim, and and then Ibrahim died, and then when his son died, there was an eclipse. And immediately the Muslims said that even the sun and moon are saddened by the Prophet's loss, where the Muslims were saying that God caused the eclipse to show that that sadness that of the Prophet Muhammad's son's death. And the Prophet Muhammad rebuked them, saying that the sun and the moon eclipse because it's just a natural phenomenon. It has nothing to do with me or the death of my son and stuff like that. And this is found in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim and stuff like that. So there's an authentic hadith. So he does a really good job in refuting the claims that the Prophet Muhammad made up the Quran or he plagiarized off others and stuff like that. And this is found in chapter 17 of the book. And again, I'm reading from an introduction to the Sciences of the Quran by Pbuh Yasir Qadri, and this is found on page 374 through 381. So I just recommend, and then he goes into other, he refutes other arguments made against the Quran and things like that. Where critics of the Quran say, well, there's variants in the Quran with Ibn Masud and Uthman and stuff like that, and he refutes it, saying, Ibn Masud later on agreed with Uthman, and stuff like that. And there are other arguments that he refutes. I'm trying to keep this video short, so I can't really get into it, but I would just recommend this book, chapter 17 of this book, where he does a really good job in refuting arguments made against the Quran and stuff like that. So that's all I wanted to say about refuting these three main arguments made against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and stuff like that. The next video I'll be explaining evidence for Islam. So hopefully this video refutes those arguments against the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Thanks, Islam.